Bienvenue à la réunion numéro 100.
Welcome to meeting number 102 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics.
Pursuant to Standing Order 1083H and the motion adopted by the committee on Wednesday, December 6th, the committee is resuming today its study of the federal government's use of technological tools capable of extracting personnel data from mobile devices and computers. La réunion d'aujourd'hui.
Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the standing orders. Members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application.
Just want to remind all members, and I know the witnesses have been briefed on this, just be mindful of the earpieces because if they're too close to the microphone, they could cause hearing damage to our interpreters. And I'd like to now welcome our witnesses for the first hour. From the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, Brent Napier, Acting Director General, Conservation and Protection. Sam Ryan is here as well. He's the Director General, Integrated Technical Services. And from the Department of the Environment, we've got Hannah Rogers, who's here, Director General, Environmental Enforcement, and Donald Walker, Chief Enforcement Officer. I'm going to start with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. You have up to 5 minutes to address the committee. Please go ahead.
Hello and good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Brent Napier, and I am the Acting Director General of Conservation and Protection Directorate at Fisheries and Oceans Canada. I'm joined today by my colleague Sam Ryan, Director General, DFO IT Operations. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that I'm grateful to be joining you here on traditional unceded territory of Anishinaabe Algonquin people. Mr. Ryan and I appreciate the opportunity to appear before this committee on behalf of Fisheries and Oceans Canada and to provide you information on Conservation Protection Program, our National Digital Forensic Service, which falls under my responsibility, and the Cybersecurity Digital Forensics Investigator Service, which is under Mr. Ryan's responsibility. C'est le programme d'application de loi de pêche et océan Canada.
Conservation and Protection is the enforcement program of Fisheries and Oceans Canada. The department's mandate is to sustainably manage fisheries and aquaculture, and the proper management of fisheries and marine and aquatic resources requires a robust compliant verification program.
Fishery officers in locations across Canada. Our officers work with general public harvesters, indigenous communities, and industry to conserve and protect Canada's marine and aquatic resources. Fishery officers verify compliance with fishery-related statutes such as the Fisheries Act and the Species at Risk Act and take enforcement actions, including undertaking investigations and recommending prosecution for offenses. Historically, harvesting and reporting of fishery resources was done using paper forms such as logbook and charts. As technology has advanced, harvesters have adopted new technology such as chart plotters, electronic logs, and electronic communication devices into their harvesting operations. To remain an effective enforcement organization, CMP has adapted its capacity, tools, and use of technology. This includes the implementation of new units to support complex investigations, including those involving complex digital files, components, and data. Digital forensics examiners are now part of the CMP team, and they use new digital technologies and technological solutions and approaches to support digital enforcement investigations. CMP's digital forensics team is centrally managed in Ottawa and supports fishery officers across the country through regional labs. The digital forensics team is made up of 7 experienced, highly trained, and highly skilled digital forensics examiners. The training and technical solutions used by CMP's digital forensics team is in line with Canadian, municipal, provincial, and federal law enforcement standards. Before deploying any technical solution or retrieving any digital data, CMP fishery officers and investigators seek a judicial authorization or warrant. The IT Operations Cybersecurity Digital Forensic Investigator Team uses digital forensics tools to support the department's mandate to promote and maintain compliance with legislation and regulations, as well as internal administrative investigations into violations of Government of Canada policy, such as fraud or harassment in the workplace, and for supporting cybersecurity activities, such as investigating cybersecurity incidents. In the context of administrative investigation, it is important to note that judicial authorization is not required and are conducted with the full awareness and cooperation of the involved individuals. The nature of the allegations and the subsequent investigation are defined within the investigation's terms of reference, which is shared with the involved individual. In closing, the Government of Canada, including Fisheries and Oceans Canada, is committed to working with other federal departments and agencies, provincial and territorial governments, Indigenous peoples, and other partners to fulfill its commitment to protect, enhance, and restore the biodiversity and health of Canada's marine and freshwater environments through an integrated ecosystem approach that supports the sustainable use of marine and aquatic resources. Thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Napier. Next, we're going to go to the Department of the Environment. You have up to 5 minutes. Mr. Walker, I assume you're going to start, or you have up to 5 minutes, sir, to address the committee. Go ahead. Just just press the button in front of the, there you go.
Excellent.
Okay.
Good morning, members of the committee. It is a pleasure to be here with you today. My name is Donald Walker, and I am the Chief Enforcement Officer at Environment and Climate Change Canada. I'm joined by my colleague Hannah Rogers, who is the Director General of Environmental Enforcement. Nous sommes heureux d'être ici pour vous.
We are pleased to be here to explain our mandate and provide you with an overview of our operations. I will also talk about our use of digital forensics software.
Environment and Climate Change Canada administers several environmental statutes and their associated regulations. These include the Canadian Environmental Protection Act, the Pollution Prevention Provisions of the Fisheries Act, and the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act, among others. We also enforce wildlife laws, such as the Wild Animal and Plant Protection and Regulation of International and Interprovincial Trade Act, the Migratory Birds Convention Act, and the Species at Risk Act. The Environment and Climate Change Canada Enforcement Branch was formed in 2005 with a mandate to conduct inspections to verify compliance with these laws and their associated regulations, investigate possible violations, and take action to compel compliance when violations are identified. Comptons près de 500 employés dans
With nearly 500 employees across Canada, the Enforcement Branch is comprised of uniformed enforcement officers who have the powers and protections of peace officers when enforcing the laws under which they are designated. These officers conduct thousands of inspections per year to verify compliance.
If enforcement officers find sufficient evidence of an alleged violation under the Environment and Wildlife Protection Acts for which they are responsible, they will take appropriate action in accordance with our compliance and enforcement policy. These actions are designed to restore compliance and may include issuing warnings, directions, compliance orders, tickets, and administrative monetary penalties. When the environmental harm or the factual circumstances warrant it, officers conduct investigations and collect evidence to support the laying of charges. À cette fin, l'application de la loi.
To this end, Environment and Climate Change Canada's Enforcement Branch works closely with colleagues at the Department of Justice Canada and the Public Prosecution Service of Canada to build prosecutable cases.
Since the creation of the Enforcement Branch, the nature of the non-compliance we uncover has changed, and evidentiary requirements to establish non-compliance in court have grown more complex. While the majority of our regulated sectors are compliant, we also respond to non-compliance by organizations and individuals that sometimes go to great lengths to conceal or to hide the negligence that led to serious environmental damage or biodiversity loss. This has only increased as the courts have issued more serious penalties. In response to this changing reality, enforcement received a mandate in 2020 to modernize its operations. This includes the implementation of a risk-based approach for setting its inspection priorities to ensure our resources are targeted where the potential for environmental damage or impact on wildlife is greatest. It also included investments in new information technology infrastructure, data analytics capacity, and digital forensic software, in large part to ensure we could meet modern information management expectations, as well as provide evidence to meet the standard of the courts. Our digital forensics lab is staffed by a small number of specialized analysts, and these employees are highly trained professionals, first as enforcement officers and then as digital forensics experts. This training ensures that they understand the limits of their authorities and the specific mandate of the digital forensics unit. The digital forensics software we use can only be employed under warrant and only within the context of enforcing Environment and Climate Change Canada legislation. Digital data that can be imaged or acquired are extracted on site during the execution of a court order. Devices from which data cannot be extracted on site are collected and brought to the National Laboratory. Digital evidence that is collected typically consists of information that can be stored on smartphones, laptops, cloud-based storage systems, servers, and flash drives. Les analystes en informatique judiciaire
Digital forensics analysts are the only people within Environment and Climate Change Canada who use such tools.
Notre ministère
Our department must continue to evolve and innovate to remain effective. But these new tools require that we continue to pay close attention to how we manage information, particularly as it relates to privacy.
de la vie privée. Environment and Climate Change Canada takes privacy very seriously, and to this end, enforcement launched a comprehensive review of its information management procedures, including for the use of digital forensic software. We are completing new privacy impact assessments with those that focus on our operational activities being prioritized. We communicated our intentions to the Privacy Commissioner in June of 2022. This review, which started in 2023, will include specific tools like digital forensic software, and the operational components are our priority. The privacy impact assessment that covers forensic software will be completed in the upcoming fiscal year. Thank you for your attention, and I will be happy to answer the questions of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. We're going to, first of all, I want to welcome the members of the committee who are here today. We've got an all-star cast, Madame Kuzi, Mr. Oliphant, Mr. Housefather, and Ms. Idlet. Welcome to committee. We're going to start our first 6-minute round with Madame Kuzi. Commencez, s'il vous plaît.
Merci beaucoup, and it's always a pleasure to be here, Mr. Chair. At Ethics, the ethical heartbeat of Parliament, since the Prime Minister doesn't have one. All right, I'd like to first of all thank my colleagues for their good work with the Privacy Commissioner, Philippe Dufresne, who said he first learned of these tools being used by at least 13 federal departments and agencies through a Radio-Canada report published in November. Shocking. And he also stated that his office should not be learning about the use of such technology after the fact, which I think is a very important piece of information here, despite the fact that in Appendix B of the Directive on Private Impact Assessment, it states that government institutions seeking Treasury Board approval, and of course, Mr. Chair, I do fundamentally hold the President of the Treasury Board responsible for this incredible lapse, or activities that involve personal information are responsible for making every reasonable effort to initiate the PIA at the earliest possible phase of project planning and identifying the timelines for the completion of the PIA. And yet we have the Privacy Commissioner who tells this group, my colleagues, that he learned about this after the fact. So, Mr. Ryan, did your department procure surveillance gear that can be used to access employees' information and potentially the information of Canadians at large, yes or no?
Thank you very much for your question. So we do not have surveillance equipment. I think you asked about surveillance gear. We do not have surveillance equipment. The actual software that we have is used as part of our administrative investigations, and it's used with the full understanding of the employees involved. It follows a very rigorous process where we go through a terms of reference that is shared with the individuals, and they're fully aware about what is within and not within scope. And again, it's not surveillance because we actually have to have the equipment, whether it's a laptop in question or a government-issued phone in question. They have to be within our forensics unit.
Okay, and was this software procured without the use of the Privacy Impact Assessment?
So I believe the software in question is one of our forensics tools, and again, like all software, it goes through many different iterations of the tool. I think that tool has been sold for many, many years, potentially more than 10 or 15 years. I believe it was started to be used when it wasn't possible to actually copy your contact details from your flip phone. So I believe that is that's how this software came into being. So again, it's more than I think 15 or 20 years that these forensic tools have been in place. And I believe the Privacy Act, the PIA came into force in 2010 approximately.
Okay, but is the PIA required for these tools?
And a PIA, as I understand it, is part of the overall process or the program is being evaluated. So when we're looking at it, again, from my perspective, it is the administrative investigations. So that process or that program has been in place for many decades. The tool that we're talking about.
Is it required for the tools, the PIA? Is it required for this software?
So again, the PIA is not software specific, it is for the program. The tool is one part of the program.
Okay, so I will take that as a yes. Did you receive any direction from the Treasury Board when it was announced that your department had not filled out the required PIAs?
Me personally, I was not a part of those communications. I know within our department, our ATIP office was in communication, I believe, both with the Privacy Commissioner and with Treasury Board, and that is the mechanism by which the communication happens within our department and the central agency and the Privacy Commission.
Okay, have you received any indication from the President of the Treasury Board on enforcing compliance with this important requirement for the PIA? Have you received any direction from the Treasury Board specifically?
So again, from my perspective, all those communications would happen between our ATIP office and then again Treasury Board as well as the Privacy Commissioner. So those communications, I believe, have happened. But again, me personally, I am not privy to the specific communications.
Mr. Walker, do you have the same software, or what has your department procured surveillance gear similar to Mr. Ryan or otherwise to access employees' information and potentially the information of Canadians at large?
So we have acquired the same software about which we are speaking today. It is not intended for ongoing surveillance of Canadians. We do not, in the Environment and Climate Change Canada, use the software for employee devices.
Okay. And what is your justification for procuring this software again without the use of the privacy impact assessment?
So I will turn shortly to my colleague, Ms. Rogers, to talk a little bit about the protections that we have in place. Certainly at the time that the Digital Forensics Unit was established in 2013, this was viewed as a natural evolution of the search warrant process, where we seek court orders to acquire specific information. And certainly we would not expect that the enforcement branch of Environment and Climate Change Canada would not access information unless it had been printed for the purposes of pursuing non-compliance under environmental or wildlife protection legislation. But I would ask Ms. Rogers to speak briefly about the protections in place.
Can you be clear as to if you received any direction from the Treasury Board when it was announced that the required PIAs were not filled out for this type of software?
Like my colleague, I cannot say definitively whether the department received specific information from the Treasury Board, but Environment and Climate Change Canada already had a privacy impact assessment development process underway at the time of the reporting on this last year.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Kuzi. Next, we're going to go to Ms. Khalid. Go ahead for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for appearing today. Just to follow up, Mr. Walker, when did you acquire these technologies?
My understanding, and I will turn to my colleague just for confirmation, is that it was in 2013 as part of the creation of the digital forensics, at the time, computer forensics program in the enforcement branch of ECCC.
That's interesting. Maybe we should ask the previous Treasury Board to come in to answer some of these questions. Now, I've been asking questions, and I will turn to both of you one by one. What, in your opinion, is the importance of having a privacy impact assessment?
So from an Environment and Climate Change Canada perspective, and I will turn to my colleague again to provide further details, the importance is to make sure that we have the rigors in place to ensure the proportionality of the tools we're using and that we have appropriate measures in place to protect the information. Ms. Rogers?
Yes, I'd add that we have a number of safeguards in place. The information that is gathered using these tools is only accessed by highly trained officers in very few numbers.
My sincerest apologies. My question was, what's the importance of it, in your opinion, of having a privacy impact assessment?
So we take the privacy of all Canadians very seriously. And as Mr. Walker mentioned, we have a PIA underway at the moment, and we will continue to complete that work and expect the PIA that relates to our operational activities to be completed in this next coming year.
And why did we not do a PIA when it was required?
At the time of the development of the program, it was viewed as a natural extension, and there was not an intent to collect personal information. As Ms. Rogers mentioned, we have a specialized team that works on the computer forensics itself, which is separated entirely from the investigators on the file. So there is a wall in between the two pieces of information. And so the digital forensics experts are trained to seek out the exact information that is being sought under the court order and to disregard any personal information that's being collected. At the time, and this would precede both of us, the understanding was that because this was not intended to collect or store personal information, that it might not have been required. We have since, out of an abundance of caution, and starting in 2022, determined that with the modernization of our activities in the Environment and Climate Change Canada Enforcement Branch, there is value in conducting privacy impact assessments across the range of our activities.
Thanks very much. Are you surveilling Canadians at large?
We are not surveilling Canadians at large. There are occasions, as with any operational law enforcement organization, where we will monitor certain sites where we expect non-compliance to occur. For instance, in the case of the Migratory Birds Convention Act and the regulations that are associated with this, if someone has, for instance, laid bait in a hunting zone within the 14 days prior to a hunting season beginning, it's important for our officers, where a physical presence may serve as a deterrent, also to observe more discreetly in order to determine who is engaged in non-compliant activity.
Thanks very much. Turning over to Mr. Ryan, Mr. Napier, same questions. What's your opinion of the importance of a privacy impact assessment?
Thank you so much, Chair, for the question, and perhaps I can start. To manage risk, to inform operations and process, and to, of course, protect privacy above all.
Why did you not fulfill the PIA requirements when they were necessary?
Much like my colleagues from ECCC, these are legacy programs that predate many of our current rules and policies. They were seen, again, as an extension of what we had conducted in the past. In fact, these tools are more surgical in the sense that they can actually direct us to the files we're looking for instead of having to comb through paper files where you would basically be privy to information you wouldn't otherwise need to do with these tools.
Are you surveilling Canadians at large?
We absolutely are in the fishery, but not with these tools.
Can you expand on that a little bit? What does that mean?
So Fisheries and Oceans fishery officers, our 550 fishery officers, of course, are on the water and conducting surveillance of the activities that are occurring there through more traditional means of patrols and inspections. But these tools are not part of that toolbox for them.
So I'm talking specifically about this digital forensic technologies that we're talking about. Are you surveilling Canadians through this technology, sir?
We absolutely are not.
That's good to hear. Now, are there instances where you do need to use these tools? Obviously, you've acquired them, and what are those instances?
For us, it's all in relation to verifying compliance under warrant. So for us, moving from inspection to investigation, we use these tools to collect evidence and follow the evidentiary process. We use judicial authority, so a warrant, in which the warrant provides strict guidance and direction on the types of information we have access to, and that governs our process and the use of these tools.
And are individuals aware that they are being, that these forensic tools are being used for them?
They absolutely are, because they are served the warrant.
And where do you store this information?
We benefit from having 3 labs that are specially designed to encase evidence. So they're air-gapped and secure. And so all information, including information that might be collected in the evidentiary collection process, private information that might not directly be relevant, is housed in this area as well, which is not on the cloud, is not on the network. It's well protected, and limited access to these facilities, 24-hour surveillance, and only the examiners are using it with fishery officer guidance.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Khalid. Mr. Napier. Monsieur Villemire, vous avez 6 minutes, s'il vous plaît, commencez.
Please start. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you to all the witnesses for being with us today. It'll give us the chance to deepen our conversations. It seems like we're talking about fish more than anything else here. Mr. Walker, Your concerns for privacy seem at most a little light. Can you give us a bit more information, please?
Je dirais
I would say that our concerns for privacy are in fact rather run quite deep. The issue here is that during the beginning of the program, we believed that the measures in place at the time were sufficient to manage the information. However, with the evolution of our work overall, we decided that we should review everything. And we wanted to take more care to ensure that the measures were part of a PIA. And so at the department, you purchase a tool. You'll decide whether or not to use it. You see what to do with it. And Treasury Board required a PIA. It didn't seem to have been done. And there was an article by CBC Radio-Canada, and there are a number of departments, including your own, that either did not carry out a PIA or did not respond to the CBC Radio-Canada article. You didn't state that you were currently doing a PIA. You said that you hadn't done a PIA. You might be right. I don't remember exactly how we responded to the article. It was perhaps the third time in 2 years that such a question was posed to us by the media. The purchase of those tools is public information available on the internet. I don't believe that we hid the fact that we use such tools in order to respect our mandate, but I do not recall whether or not we informed journalists that we were carrying out a PIA. The articles that were given to us, well, in those articles, the answer is no. You were caught, actually. In the article? I would say no. Sometimes we receive questions from the media regarding our use of tools, including the software that we're talking about today. And as I stated, it was the second time in 2023 that we had received such a question. I think the first was from the Journal de Montréal. When we received the RCMP and the RCMP and CSIS, we would say yes, but with environment and climate change and fisheries, we think that you're surveilling probably trees and water. But do you believe that your use of these tools is proportionate to the risks that you're attempting to mitigate? I will avoid using the word surveillance because that's not what we're doing with this tool. The tool that we're using allows us to extract data from electronic devices. When we're going through a mandate, that's when it's used, and we need a warrant. But what are you looking for? I'm sorry, I'm curious. It depends on the file, but perhaps my colleague will be able to answer. When we're looking at the data that we're trying to find, we're looking for things for our investigation. One moment. You're looking for what you're looking for to find what you're looking for. Let me give you an example.
laws that relate to environmental protection and wildlife. So, for example, if a mining company has committed an infraction under the Fisheries Act, we will be looking for any evidence they have that they knew they might conduct such an event that might cause a spill, what kind of technical information they have that might be relevant to the investigation.
Est-ce que c'est proportionnel à la recherche?
Is it proportional? Because this tool seems like a bit of a bazooka to me. So is it proportionate to the potential infraction? I think so, yes. Because we can't extract the data without those tools. If we have a computer, are there any other ways to get to that information? No, not if we want to continue our investigation. And what did you do before in the last 50 years? We used paper. We didn't have electronic devices. So it comes through the arrival of electronic devices. Thank you, Mr. Villemura, Ms. Rogers, Mr. Walker.
Go ahead, please.
Koyanami Ulakut. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am honored to sit here to replace my colleague Matthew Green at the moment, and I'm finding this study quite interesting. It's an area that I hadn't really been interested in, but I'm finding the responses fascinating, and I wondered to both agencies, based on some of the responses to questions raised by the Liberals about the use of the PIAs. Can you confirm that whether you did have to use them and at which point? I guess I'll start with Donald.
So our understanding of the program when it was first inaugurated in 2013 is that the view at the time was that the protections in place to avoid the collection of personal information and simply focus on the evidence of noncompliance under a court order would have, under the decision tree, not necessitated a privacy impact assessment. However, in 2022, as we were going through a modernization exercise with respect to implementing a risk-based approach to our enforcement activities and a periodic review of our directives, we felt that it was prudent to engage in new privacy impact assessments to cover not just a specific tool, but sort of the activities that we undertake so that it takes into account the context in which different tools are used.
Thank you for the question, Chair. And much to echo much of what was said, the other part for us is there is reasonable belief that there has been an offense created. So it's not simply during an inspection or just to comb the area. We have a situation where we have reason to believe offense has been created, and now we're into the investigation stage of it, where we bring in judicial authority. And so it's very clear at that stage, we have to present our case, and we have a judge who says, yes, what types of information we're allowed to take, what's reasonable, and at that stage we execute. In terms of your question on a PIA, again, these are the mechanics of evidence collection have not changed. The tools have, and so for our purposes, we are not focused on the tool, we're focused on the process. And I think it is warranted at this stage to review those processes to ensure we are protecting privacy. We feel there are safeguards, significant safeguards in place, but we have ourselves voluntarily agreed to go ahead with the PIA process. We have ourselves engaged with the Privacy Commissioner in December, and we are executing that process as well. But on the process and not the tools will change over time. They come out with new versions and new tools, and all of these tools are not the same. Some are designed to allow access to cell phones and technology. Others are search deleted items and allow us to recover those files. So there's a series of different tools for each of the different jobs. But again, strictly defined by a court order, a warrant in terms of what we're able to take. And again, it's evidence, it's not the privacy part. And where there is private information, that is set aside, protected, and destroyed once the investigation has concluded.
Thank you. And this is for each of you as well, maybe in the same order. When it comes to doing privacy impact assessments, focusing, of course, on the processes, understanding what your responses are. Have you seen that there needs to be updates in legislation or regulation in order for the work that you're doing to do privacy impact assessments to be completed in a more efficient way?
I'm not certain that we would see it as our place to comment on the Privacy Act itself. As an enforcement organization, we are responsible for taking the laws and regulations as they are written and making sure that we are acting accordingly. So I think what we have found is similar to what the Privacy Commissioner said during his testimony, is that it is a resource-intensive activity to undertake a privacy impact assessment. We are prepared to put the appropriate resources against it, and from our perspective, it's a matter of making sure that we have the right expertise in place to help us identify places where putting a better written assessment around our procedures that are in place or refining our procedures is valuable for us to ensure that we have the confidence in how of the public in how we are using information.
Thank you for the question, Chair. And I believe that the mechanisms in place, both within the government, with the Act, within the law, and within the policy are appropriate. I think departments can use those. PIA is an identified tool to assess risk and to support and inform process change as necessary. We heard from other members about the proportionality of it. It allows us to assess that as well. In the case of DFO and Fisheries and Oceans, it's about managing a public resource and allowing access to a certain group to be able to use the sustainable resource and ensuring that that is being done appropriately on behalf of Canadians. And so these tools are put into place to ensure and verify compliance for that very important reason.
Okay, I think I still have some time, about a minute. What measures have you taken to ensure the privacy of the data and to prevent misuse of that software for each of you?
So
Very quick responses, please.
we keep a wall between what our forensic investigators find within the use of these tools and the actual investigation that is being completed. So they do not share anything that is not relevant or should not be included in the warrant with the actual investigators. So that is one rule. We destroy any private information that we might discover when we are actually going through any equipment that we find. We follow international standards for that.
Okay.
And our officers are highly trained on exactly how to deal with private information when they do come across it.
Thank you. I'm going to give Mr. Napier a quick, I'm talking 10 seconds.
So people processing tools. So we have safe storage. We have individuals that are trained. We restrict access, and have process and policy and make sure that that information is safeguarded. It's treated as evidence. It's coupled with the same, in the same process, which has a very strict process to allow us to take it to court and assess.
Thank you for that, Mr. Napier. That finishes our first 6-minute rounds. We're going to start with our second rounds, 5, 2.5, 2.5. Mr. Kirk, you have 5. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's been very enlightening to hear the comments from our witnesses here today, and even that ECCC would consider themselves just another law enforcement agency. Certainly, I think that conflicts with what most Canadians would expect of the Department of the Environment. So first to ECCC, has tools capable of extracting personal data ever been used in a situation where there was not judicial authorization? Is there ever an instance where they have been used where there was not judicial authorization?
Not at Environment and Climate Change Canada.
Okay. So there's never been an instance.
These tools have never been used at Environment and Climate Change Canada without a court order.
Okay. To folks at DFO?
The same at DFO, yeah.
Okay. So you're both saying there's never been an instance where there was not judicial authorization to use these tools?
Sorry, maybe I'll have my colleague comment on an outside the enforcement use of the tool, because there might.
Just keep it brief.
So again, for administrative investigations, And we're not talking about doing something without the knowledge of the employees. So again, within an administrative investigation, that comes through the chief security officer. We have a terms of reference, and then the actual employee is fully aware and part of that process. So if there is an investigation, they may provide their laptop and their phone with their passwords as well. So again, it is not used to break into the phone, if that's the heart of the question. And no, we do not break into someone's phone. It is done with the understanding and the aid of the employees involved.
And just to give a chance to ECCC, is there any, in the course of administrative investigations of employees, has there ever been an instance?
It is not currently possible for this tool to be used for administrative investigations in Environment and Climate Change Canada. It is not attached to the network, and it is used exclusively within the enforcement branch.
Okay, thank you for that. There is a concern around the privacy impact assessment, and certainly I hear from constituents often that we'll look at a job advertisement that they see through ECCC, and it looks like the minister is hiring climate police that may target a farmer, and certainly that has led to an incredible erosion of trust in our institutions, and certainly the people I speak with have very little trust in what this government is doing. So it baffles me that, and when the privacy commissioner was here, I asked very specifically about whether or not he would be able to provide advice to departments that were interested in ensuring that they were compliant. And the Treasury Board rules say that PIAs are not an option. Now, there's some questions about whether they're a legal requirement, but the regulations say very, very clearly. So it baffles me as to why there would not be the preemptive work done to say, to ensure that Canadians' rights and privacy are protected. So in 20 seconds or so, I'll start with DFO. Why was a PIA not done beforehand?
So I think you've heard that many of these tools are long-standing. So 2013 was when DFO first started to use them. At that time, there was a different environment. There were rigorous measures taken to secure and ensure the privacy was respected.
So thank you for that. But a PIA was not done before before this most recent tool was purchased. My unsolicited advice to you and your superiors that I would encourage you to pass on is do the PIA. Call the privacy commissioner and get it done. I'll give ECCC the same opportunity.
Certainly, I think the Treasury Board directive associated with privacy impact assessments appears to have been viewed at the time as not applicable to this particular work because it was not intended to collect, store, or treat personal information. As a result of a more comprehensive review undertaken in 2022, the decision was undertaken to complete privacy impact assessments across areas of our work.
So I'm basically out of time here. So again, I'm going to give the unsolicited advice, do the assessment, pick up the phone, and to your superiors, pick up the phone and call the commissioner. Because right now, Canadians do not trust what agencies and departments of this government are doing. They do not trust them with their private information. And when possibly misleading information being provided to reporters, which has been acknowledged here today, there's a whole host of reasons as to why that trust seems not capable of being extended to this government. So please, pick up the phone and do the work beforehand.
You are out of time, Mr. Kirk. Thank you. Mr. Housefather for 5. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This government has been mentioned multiple times. You bought the software in 2013, correct?
Yes, we established the computer forensics unit in 2013.
Who was Prime Minister in 2013?
It was a different Prime Minister in 2013.
Stephen Harper. Thank you very much. When did you buy this? When did you buy the software?
In 2013 as well.
Who was the Prime Minister in 2013?
Stephen Harper.
Thank you very much. And at that time, the requirements were the same to do a PIA. So obviously, whoever was Treasury Board President at that time, if you're going to blame the Treasury Board President, was the one that should be accountable. Thank you very much. Now let's get to the real case of things. We're doing this study because people are worried that there is some type of the original CBC article that Ms. Kuzi read from talked about spyware. Spyware is something that is a surreptitious thing that you're putting on somebody's phone to extract information on an ongoing basis to use it for nefarious purposes. Do you guys use spyware at all, or malware?
No, and I can provide it to my colleague for greater detail, but unlike spyware, the tools that we use are for the extraction of existing data under a specific court order with the owner's knowledge. So it is not clandestine, it is not ongoing, there is no software installed on the device, and it is not conducted remotely. So there's no ongoing component which would be required for it to be spyware.
Here's the notions, is it the same?
Exactly the same answer, yes.
So the correct word for this would be an extraction tool, right? It's something that you have in a location, in a secure location, and you need the device to extract the information. So somebody has voluntarily surrendered their device in each and every case, or had a court order to order the production of that device, and you then take the information off the device, but then you don't put some program on the phone where when it goes back to that person on an ongoing basis, you can take away their information again. Correct?
That is correct, except in Environment and Climate Change Canada's case, it is not a voluntary submission.
Well, you do not also use it for employee discipline or violations of codes of conduct of employees, where at Fisheries and Oceans, that is a possibility. So for you, it's a court order. For you, it's either a court order or voluntary surrender based on an agreement with the employee concerned. And I would imagine at Fisheries and Oceans, because let's get into that, because the other departments so far have generally said, I mean, there's some that have said that they use it for internal once at the RCMP, but mostly don't. In your case, the policies at Fisheries and Oceans, when somebody signs up as an employee, is this clear in the policies that the device could be used in this way?
So as part of the, every time you log into the network, we have an acceptable use policy. Every time you reboot your computer, you access via, a virtual private network of VPN. The acceptable use policy is you accept it. It details in there what you can and cannot do. And again, these are not Department of Fisheries and Oceans policies. These are Government of Canada policies. And so we are applying all of those policies.
Perfect. And now I just want to get back to some terms that got used in the first round, which I think may be misinterpreted by people. And so I just want to come back to them. You, sir, had talked a little bit about surveillance and surveilling Canadians when Ms. Khalid asked that question. And it seemed frightening at the time because it made it sound like we were using technology, because this is all about technology, to surveil Canadians. That's not at all what you meant, right?
So fishery officers do monitoring, control, and surveillance of the fishery. So there are Canadians active in the fishery, whether...
But they're not using this technology to do it.
Exactly right. That was not clear.
We have to be clear. What you're talking about is a 100-year-old practice, right, where Fisheries and Ocean is out there on the ocean looking to make sure that people are not fishing in places they're not allowed to fish, or doing things that are against the law. The same visual surveillance that has been going on for before any of us were born, correct?
That is correct, sir. I would suggest that there are some modern technologies, such as in our aircraft, but yes, we definitely not these tools.
Well, the aircraft existed before any of us were born, too.
I'm old.
If you were born before the Wright brothers, Rob, I'd be surprised. Can you just clarify also that nobody is surveilling Canadians, sir, like generally at Environment?
So again, we would not be using these tools to conduct surveillance activities. Where we may conduct surveillance activities, and the example I used was disrespect for the migratory birds regulations in terms of hunting. And generally speaking, it's actually compliant hunters who would report that to us, and that we may watch the site to determine who is engaged in activities. That's correct.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Housefather. On va à M. Villemure, juste en avant de ça.
Before moving to Mr. Villemure for 2.5 minutes, there will also be 2.5 minutes for Ms. Idlout, and then 2.5 minutes for the Conservatives, and 2.5 minutes for the Liberals. And that will complete the first panel. Mr. Villemure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I find it interesting. We're saying that none of you are surveilling Canadians at large. There is a manner of surveillance being done, but under different means, as you stated. The RCMP mentioned that they look at data in a phone. It was like putting a microphone in a lamp, but there's a lot more information in a cell phone than you would get from a microphone hidden in a lamp. You stated earlier that you started the PIA in December. I've liked your answers up till now, but I wonder, are you looking to find balance between the necessity of investigating and privacy? And before you respond, my interpretation is that you would focus on an investigation first over privacy.
I would argue that that is not, in fact, the case. I think we do everything to protect privacy, and that's why we do get a judicial authority to go. We make a case, we present a case to a judge who examines the evidence that we have before us and then provides us strict parameters in terms of what we can and cannot collect, all for the purpose of presenting, beyond a reasonable doubt, a case to a judge.
Voyez-vous que le commissaire à la vie privée...
Do you believe that the privacy commissioner could be against what a judge might authorize?
I mean, I wouldn't want to speak for any of the two. Certainly, they could have their own opinions, but I think the legal system is well constructed in the sense to protect Canadians and also that information. In fact, the evidentiary chain of custody, etc., is probably some of the most strict, and therefore, any information that might accompany evidence would be treated in a similar manner.
Ouais.
All right. Do you believe that the commissioner's requirements for an investigation, is that more of a nuisance once you've received a judicial warrant?
Not at all. In fact, we're happy to hear any advice or recommendation from the commissioner and evaluate our own processes and ensure that we're respecting privacy within our processes.
Merci.
Thank you.
You have 2.5 minutes. Go ahead, please.
So I have 3 questions. So rather than asking them to respond quickly, what I would like to request is that they provide written responses to the questions that I'll be asking, if that's okay with you.
Yeah,
So
that's fine. If you want to pose the questions, and then perhaps you can take a note. We'll have the clerk follow up with you what the questions are. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Section 5.1 of the Directive on Privacy Impact Assessment provides that a privacy impact assessment must be done for, in quotes, new or substantially modified programs and activities involving the creation, collection, and handling of personal information, end quote. So my 3 questions are, could you explain the process that allows you to make a clear distinction between a new and existing program or activity? Number 2, could you explain the process that allows you to determine if modifications made to a program involving the creation, collection, and handling of personal information are important enough to require a PIA? And finally, if you have doubts regarding the application of the Directive on Privacy Impact Assessment, do you consult the Treasury Board to clarify the application of its directive?
Thank you, Ms. Idlet. I just turned to the analysts and I said, what an efficient way to use the 2.5 minutes. I'm going to ask, it really is. I'm going to ask that those responses be submitted to the committee by 5 o'clock on Wednesday. So in 6 days, if that's okay. Okay? Thank you. We're going to go, we've got 2.5. We're going to keep it really tight here on the timelines, because we've got the next panel. Mr. Brock, you've got 2.5 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, in typical Liberal fashion, they often love to blame previous administrations. Notwithstanding the fact they've been in government for almost 9 years, they can never accept their own failings. So thinking back on the evidence that I've heard, both organizations have had this device and software for almost 11 years now. And I would think within that time frame, a question to both entities, you've probably conducted hundreds, if not thousands, of investigations using the device and software. Is that fair to say, sir, Mr. Walker?
While it is true that we have conducted a large number of investigations, only 45 of these have used, in the past 11 years, have used the computer forensics tools that we're discussing.
Mr. Napier, good to see you again. Your response?
Always a pleasure, sir. I couldn't give you an exact number, but I know over the last number of years, it's been about 50 cases per year.
And you also understand that the directive by the Treasury Board was not optional. A directive means it must be done. You've confirmed to Madame Bureau of the CBC that notwithstanding her investigation, which was a great investigation because we wouldn't even know about this. Canadians wouldn't know about this. Parliamentarians wouldn't know about this, but for the good actions by Professor Light and the CBC to uncover this scandal. You've confirmed with her that you've never used a PIA on any of those investigations you've identified. Is that correct?
So for the tools.
For the tools.
There's a process level PIA, and then there's the tools themselves. So there's a differentiation.
And you confirmed that you never used a PIA.
We have PIAs for the larger program,
Right.
but we haven't adapted it.
Okay. And Mr. Walker, no PIAs as well, correct?
It is correct that we have not had a privacy impact assessment for the use of this tool.
Okay. And you know that Celebrite, one of the manufacturers of this software, makes it abundantly clear that it must be used with the consent of the person that you are surveilling. Okay, you may be opposed to the concept of spyware, but that's exactly what you're doing. You are spying on Canadians and or spying on your employees. So I'd like to hear from you very, very quickly from Mr. Napier and Mr. Walker. What is your definition of consent?
It's got to be really quick, please, both of you.
Court-ordered consent, or it could be a witness who provides some form of electronic device. And even in those cases, we still seek a court order to access them.
Mr. Walker?
Based on our procurement from the manufacturer, it requires consent or a court order, and we would only operate under a court order. Once we have moved from an inspection into an investigation, we would not necessarily ask a regulatee to provide information that would be self-incriminating
That's it.
voluntarily.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Ms. Khalid, I'm going to give you a little extra than 2:30, so go ahead, please.
I do appreciate that, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Two questions for each of you. The first is, under what circumstances did you acquire this forensic technology 10 years ago under Stephen Harper's government?
At the time that and I will pass it to my colleague shortly, at the time that we procured it in 2013, the circumstances were that many of our regulatees had moved from paper storage of documents into electronic storage of documents, which meant that in order to retrieve the information that we might get out of a filing cabinet in previous times, we actually needed to gain access to electronic devices to develop the evidence necessary to pursue the investigation.
Very similar, and you know, when committing an offense with technology, that technology now then becomes subject to these tools, right? It becomes evidence, and it collects evidence, and not unlike a filing cabinet, this is the new filing cabinet. And in order to access that filing cabinet, which could have a lock on it, even in old times, we need these tools, and that's how we use them.
Mr. Napier, when do you expect to have this PIA completed?
Like our colleagues from ETHI, this coming fiscal year, we've already made some headway in that direction.
Mr. Walker?
We expect to have the privacy impact assessment associated with this technology completed by the end of the coming fiscal year.
Thank you very much. Those are my questions, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Khalid. That concludes our first panel. I want to thank Mr. Walker, Ms. Rogers, Mr. Napier, and Mr. Ryan for appearing before the committee on this important subject. We are going to suspend for a couple of minutes and go to the next panel. The meeting is suspended. welcome our witnesses from the Canada Revenue Agency. We've got Eric Farron, who is the General Criminal Investigations Directorate, Compliance Programs Branch. Anne-Marie Lauren is here, Acting Director General and Deputy Chief Privacy Officer, Access to Information and Privacy Directorate, Public Affairs Branch. And from the Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission, we've got Steve Haroon, who's the Chief Compliance and Enforcement Officer. Anthony McIntyre is here, General Counsel and Deputy Executive Director of Legal Services. We're going to start with the Canadian Radio and Telecommunications Commission. You have up to 5 minutes to address the committee. Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting us to appear before your committee. Before I begin my remarks, I'd like to acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. My name is Stephen Haroun. I am the Chief Compliance and Enforcement Officer at the CRTC. Je suis accompagné aujourd'hui par l'avocat général du CRTC, Anthony McIntyre.
I am joined today by the CRTC General Counsel, Anthony McIntyre.
Independent.
The CRTC is an independent quasi-judicial tribunal that operates at arm's length from the government. We hold public hearings on telecommunications and broadcasting matters, and we make decisions based on the public record.
In addition, the CRTC plays a part of a larger federal government effort to protect Canadians from spam, malware, phishing, and other electronic threats. The CRTC is one of 3 agencies, along with the Competition Bureau and the Office of the Privacy Commissioner, that work to promote and enforce compliance with Canada's anti-spam legislation, or as we call it, CASL. The CRTC has a small team of less than 20 people that carries out this important mandate. CASL authorizes our investigators to request warrants from the courts to examine computers and other electronic devices when necessary. As part of those authorized activities, the CRTC staff can use digital forensic tools during investigations. How we use these tools is very limited in scope and is done in keeping with the law. In the very limited circumstances in which we have used these tools, we have obtained judicial authorization through the courts in the form of a warrant. Since 2022, the CRTC has only used these tools in 2 CASL investigations. In these cases, a warrant was obtained, and the CRTC was successful in uncovering evidence related to potential CASL violations. Nous prenons très au sérieux l'utilisation des outils.
We take the use of digital forensics tools very seriously. We follow strict legislative and judicial parameters when using these tools.
Thank you for allowing us time to explain our limited use of these tools to help protect Canadians from harmful electronic threats. We look forward to your questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Haroun. Well under time, which the committee appreciates. We're going to go to the Canada Revenue Agency now. You have up to 5 minutes to address the committee. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the Standing Committee on Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics for having us here today. My name is Eric Ferron, and I am the Director General of Criminal Investigations at the Canada Revenue Agency, the CRA. I am accompanied by my colleague Anne-Marie Lauren, Acting Director General of the Access to Information and Privacy Directorate and Deputy Chief Privacy Officer. Within the scope of my responsibilities, the Criminal Investigations Program investigates significant cases of tax evasion, tax fraud, and other serious violations of tax laws, and where appropriate, referring cases to the Public Prosecution Services of Canada, the PPSC, for possible criminal prosecution. Ms. Lauren's responsibilities include providing strategic direction, expert advice, and leadership on all access to information and privacy matters in support of the CRA's programs, services, and priorities. I would like to start by stating that the CRA does not use spyware tools to monitor its employees or Canadians. The Criminal Investigations Program does use the technological tools that are the topic of today's discussion. CRA criminal investigators and computer forensic analysts are public officers as defined by Section 2 of the Criminal Code. As public officers, CRA investigators can obtain evidence during the conduct of a criminal investigation by way of search warrants, preservation orders, and production orders pursuant to Section 47 of the Criminal Code. This is in addition to the search powers provided by the acts administered by the CRA. Warrants issued by the court grant authority to CRA investigators to search and seize personal information or data that could be otherwise protected by Section 8 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. In granting a search warrant, the issuing justice or judge must balance the rights of the CRA to gather evidence as part of a criminal investigation with the rights of individuals. Under Section 487 of the Criminal Code, search warrants are sought when there are reasonable grounds to believe that an offense has been or is suspected of having been committed. The evolution of technology has expanded the use of search warrants beyond traditional physical locations. Subsection 487 2.1 and 2.2 of the Criminal Code speak to search warrants of computers and electronic data, allowing the CRA investigators to search the electronic devices they have seized for data. It is during the execution of these judicial authorizations that the CRA may use technological tools to extract data from electronic devices. A privacy impact assessment for the Criminal Investigations Program has been in place since 2016, and the CRA was in the process of finalizing updates to it in late 2023. The update to the assessment has now been finalized, and in line with best practices, the program intends to continue reviewing its PIA on a regular basis to ensure it is up to date and reflects current operations. Mr. Chair, this concludes my opening remarks. Ms. Lorrain and I would be pleased to answer any questions committee members may have.
OK, merci, Monsieur Ferrand. On va commencer notre...
We're going to start our first round with Mr. Barrett, who has 6 minutes.
Chair, I'm going to take this opportunity to give a notice of motion that'll be moved at a later meeting. Given that the former president of Sustainable Development Technologies Canada testified before committee last week, claiming that the Minister of Industry knew about conflicts of interests at the taxpayer-backed fund since 2019, contradicting the minister's claim that he found out about this abuse at the fund just this past year, and that senior government officials misled committee about their attendance at SDTC board meetings where conflicts of interest occurred by board members and the CEO by directing taxpayer money to companies that they have an interest in, and that a senior Department of Industry official who oversaw an investigation into the fund compromised the investigation through interference and unethical behavior, that this committee dedicate 5 meetings related to developments at Sustainable Development Technologies Canada. I can send that text to the clerk, Chair, but this is an incredibly important issue, and when I have the opportunity to move it at our next meeting, with notice having been given, I would encourage all members to consider over the next couple of days their support for it, because this is an incredibly important issue.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Barrett, for that notice of motion. Once it's sent to the clerk, it'll be put into the digital binder for committee members to have a look at it. Mr. Barrett, you've got 4 minutes and 40 seconds. Go ahead, please.
To Mrs. Kuzi, please.
Madame Kuzi, commencez, s'il vous plaît.
Thank you very much, Mr. Baird, and thank you very much, Chair. I'm going to again quote the Privacy Commissioner, who said that it's going to be even more important to reassure Canadians. We need to have that reflex of privacy by design, privacy at the front end. And I must say, I was not quelled by the first group of departments that were here this morning. What I heard was, we did not have the PIAs. Don't worry, we didn't use them on employees, but we use them in far more extensive and invasive the surveillance in far more extensive and invasive other places. So I'm very, very concerned by that. And I will say that the committee agreed to communicate with all 137 federal institutions. It's unfortunate that these 4 organizations that are here today, as a model and as a sort of a check as to the other departments, but this is the pressure that is on you this morning. And the last comment I'll make before I get into the questioning is that I find it ironic that the Privacy Commissioner actually learned of the invasion, if I can use that term, by the federal departments and agencies, by actually the governing agency of Radio Canada who first posted the story. So I think that this is another very ironic piece of information given this meeting this morning. So I'll start with you, Mr. Haroon, with the same question I used on your previous colleague. Did your department procure surveillance gear that can be used to access employees' information and potentially the information of Canadians at large?
No, we do not procure surveillance gear. We have digital forensic tools, which we use to enforce CASL.
Okay, and do these digital forensic tools require the PIA?
They do.
Okay, and was the PIA required, or excuse me, obtained for these tools prior to their use?
When CASL came into force in 2014, the CRTC conducted three PIAs as it was a brand new program. One of those PIAs specifically references Section 19, search warrants, and the use of digital forensic tools. So we've had a PIA since 2014.
And so you have valid PIAs for all of these tools which you are currently using?
Correct.
Okay. I'll ask the same question of Monsieur Ferrand. Did your department procure surveillance gear that can be used to access employees' information and potentially the information of Canadians at large?
Criminal investigations has tools that we're discussing here today. They're not surveillance tools. They're digital forensic tools that we use as part of our criminal investigations. And we've had this. We've had a PIA for the criminal investigations program as a whole since 2016, and the tools that we've had were purchased right before that.
Okay. Have you received any direction from the Treasury Board when it was announced that many departments were not in compliance with the required PIAs, Mr. Ferrand? Mr. Ferrand?
The discussions with the Privacy Commissioner happened with my colleague here, so I'll let her address that question.
Yes. Excuse me. Thank you for the question. Both the OPC and Treasury Board sent follow-up questions regarding that, and we indicated that we use them for the purposes of criminal investigations, forensic tools for the purposes of investigations, and that we did have a PIA in place. And in fact, the Privacy Commissioner acknowledged receipt of that PIA and had no recommendations on it at the time.
Okay, and I will also ask Mr. Haroon if he received any direction from the Treasury Board when it was announced as to other federal departments not having the required PIAs.
We did not receive a direction from Treasury Board. We advised Treasury Board that we had a PIA as per my previous answer.
Okay. Would both departments be aware if the President of the Treasury Board is made aware of a systematic compliance issue? They're able to make direct recommendations to the head of the government institutions involved? Were there no PIAs?
Very, very quick for both of you. If either yes, no, if you can do that.
PIAs are submitted to both Treasury Board and the OPC. So if they have an opportunity to provide feedback to us on those things.
Thank you. Mr. Housefather, for 6 minutes, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I always appreciate my colleague, Ms. Kuzi. I think I was at a different panel than her for the first panel because I didn't hear any of the things that I thought she heard. I think what we came here today was that some people were hoping to hear that these tools were bought since the Liberals took power in 2015.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead on the point of order, Madam
Perhaps
Kuzi.
if the clerk can check the attendance from the first hour, the clerk will recognize that I was here. Perhaps maybe we could just take a moment and verify the attendance for the first hour.
I don't need her to do that.
Okay.
I know you were here.
Okay,
Go
thank
ahead,
you very much, Mr. Chair.
I didn't say that you weren't here. I said we don't think we were at the same meeting. I didn't say you weren't here. You
Point of order,
described
Mr.
what you
Chair.
heard you described the first panel differently than I perceived
Mr.
it.
Housefather, I've got another point of order from Ms. Kuzi. Go ahead.
I believe that the member across from me was implying that I was absent from the room for the first hour, when in fact that was the implication.
That's a matter of debate. I'm gonna go
Thank
to
you,
Mr.
Housefather.
Go ahead. You've got.
Not going to even get into that one.
I stopped your time. Go ahead. You got five.
Thank you,
5
Mr.
minutes.
Chair.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think there was an attempt to somehow say that these tools were bought when the Liberals were in power. No PIA was obtained, and there was negligence on the part of the Treasury Board. So just to be clear, CRTC, when did you buy the tool? 2014, before the Liberals took power. Et Revenu Canada, est-ce que vous pourriez me dire la même chose?
And for the CRA?
Then, as to a PIA, there was an attempt to say, well, you guys didn't comply, there was no PIA. So CRTC, you do have a PIA for this program. Since 2014. And Revenu Canada, vous aussi, vous aviez un PIA?
And same thing for the CRA, you've had a PIA since 2016?
Sounds like you guys are in compliance, which is good to hear. Now, I guess the other thing that may have been of more general concern was how these tools were being used. Were these tools being used to somehow surreptitiously, spy on Canadians? From what I understand, neither CRTC or Revenu Canada is using spyware or malware or inserting tools on devices to do anything nefarious. Would that be correct, CRTC?
That would be correct.
Et Revenu Canada aussi?
Correct, yeah.
Perfect. And the way I would understand that you use these tools is simply to extract data from a device that you have in your possession. Is that true to the CRTC?
That is correct.
Et Revenu Canada aussi?
Yes, and only once we have a judicial order.
Yeah, I was going to get to that in my next question. CRTC, you also would confirm that you would need and you've always gotten a warrant before you've taken a device?
Every time we obtain a device and or use this tool, we have a search warrant which specifies the use of these tools.
And the other thing that I would imagine we were also seeking to do was to confirm that you weren't outrageously using these devices by having, outrageous numbers of warrants for Canadians to have to produce things. And I think you said, CRTC, that you've only used this twice since 2013?
Since 2022, we've used it twice. Overall, we've used it a handful of times in 10 years.
So you are not using this on an absolutely regular, ongoing basis?
It is a very limited scope and a very limited type of investigation.
And you're not using it with respect to internal matters at the CRTC where employees are being disciplined for violating internal policies?
It is only used for castle investigations and for a very specific type of castle investigation. And there is limited use of that tool even within my own team. There's only 4 or 5 technical experts who even know how to use it.
Et est-ce que je peux demander la même question à Revenu?
And can I ask the same question to Canada Revenue Agency? Yes. For our team, they use the tool only when we have a judicial authority to do so. So once we've received a device, we can use the tool to gain access to the device and extract the information. That is the only reason why we'd use the tool. Perfect.
Going through process questions, because I think, again, that was another thing. Does CRTC, I'll start with CRTC, I'll keep going, alternating. Does CRTC generally try to comply with Treasury Board directives? Is Treasury Board, when regulations come from Treasury Board, when they're directives from Treasury Board, is there an effort to comply usually?
I would suggest yes.
And how do you ensure that you are compliant? Like what is the method that you use to review the direct? Like I imagine you have people at CRTC that are the ones that are responsible for ensuring that these directives are being complied with. How does that work?
Absolutely. We have a strong corporate team at the CRTC which looks at all the directives across government, be it Treasury Board, be it the Privacy Commissioner, be it others. And if it impacts my program and the work that we do, then I am directly involved in ensuring that we meet all those requirements.
Est-ce que je peux demander la même question à Revenu Canada?
Same question to the CRA. How do you ensure that you respect the directives?
We have a privacy management framework in the agency. We have a chief privacy officer as part of that privacy management framework, which the pillar is really privacy by design. We have monitor completion of things like privacy assessments, and in fact, we have key performance indicators that measure that, and quarterly updates are provided to senior management on the completion of privacy assessments.
And on other matters, though, because let's say not only isolated to this issue, but on other issues where you deal with the Treasury Board, there's an ongoing dialogue, as I would understand it, between Revenue Canada and the Treasury Board, correct?
Yeah, and the Office of the Privacy Commissioner. Yes, our privacy management framework takes all dimensions of privacy into account and monitors all portions of that from a policy perspective as well as practices perspective.
And the vast majority of these interactions would occur at the departmental level, right? They wouldn't be with politicians. They wouldn't be Minister Anand entering into your premises to start directing you as to how to apply Treasury Board, rules, right? You're dealing with bureaucrats at the department.
Yeah, so privacy is an obligation of all parts of the agency, and senior management is regularly engaged on those obligations and understands those roles and responsibilities.
Thank you so much. And CRTC, same thing?
The same thing, the CRTC compliance with all federal government requirements, and even more so to your point about a minister is, we are quasi-judicial independent tribunal, so we're even one step further removed.
Thank you so much. I think my time has probably elapsed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Housefather. Monsieur Villemure pour 6 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, everyone. Welcome. You know that a parliamentary committee tries to find a way to reassure Canadians on issues that they find concerning, as is the case here. And I'll start with the CRA. I think people are a little bit afraid of the CRA. We don't talk about them much, and so that's why it's even more important to have trust. It should be spontaneous trust. And I'm wondering, in the article, the CBC Radio-Canada article, it was mentioned that the CRA had not completed a PIA. And you're saying this morning that that was not the case. Can you explain the difference between the two versions of the facts, please?
Je peux essayer
I can try to explain. So that PIA was completed in 2016. It was completed on the program as a whole and not on the tools. And when the question was asked, perhaps we weren't specific enough in our response, and so perhaps that caused confusion. But since 2016, that PIA was completed on the program using the tools. Do you believe that it is necessary that a PIA be completed on the tool? I believe that the PIA needs to be completed on the program, and so that is what we did. And in our PIA, we state that our experts use certain tools when we seize electronic devices so that they can extract information. And so we mention it, and it is part of the assessment. Perhaps it would be interesting to tell your communications team to be very specific. I think that might lead to mistrust if you don't. Especially with the CRA, things move very quickly. So PIA was done in 2016 on the program, not on the tool, and it is used in the circumstances that you mentioned. Perfect, thank you. Mr. Arun, same question for you. People don't really know the CRTC. They might think that you're responsible for airwaves and nothing more, but when journalists asked you a question, you said that there hadn't been a PIA, but you're saying that there was one done in 2014. So what is the truth? Thank you for the question. I think that we're facing the same situation as our colleagues.
I believe it was very specific. Do you have a PIA for this specific tool, of which the response was no. We do have, as I indicated, a PIA for the program, which is how typically PIAs work. It's for the entire program, where those digital forensics tools are identified, not by name, right? For example, we would never use, if it became a different name, if it became Celebrex or Celebrite 2.0, then that PIA would no longer be valid, right? So it's for the tools overall.
Voyez-vous que le PIA...
Do you believe that a PIA would be necessary for the use of a specific tool, or do you believe that the program covers all of it?
The program PIA covers it all because it is very specific about the use of digital forensic tools and evidence gathering, etc.
Est-ce que vous croyez qu'il existe des moyens moins invasifs?
Do you believe that there might be less invasive means to achieve the same results?
It would be extremely challenging. For example, we use the digital forensic tools to gather information, right? For example, I mean, we all carry computers in our pocket, right? At the end of the day, these are now mini computers. It's not like a laptop computer where you can remove the hard drive and analyze that hard drive and put it back in. The only way into this phone and to know what's in this phone is to literally, through this port, which is how Celebrite works, you connect it to the phone, it makes a digital copy, a forensic, evidentiary valid copy of that phone, and then Celebrate allows you to analyze it and allows us to preserve it for investigation purposes, for federal court purposes, etc.
Merci beaucoup pour votre réponse. Mais dites-moi.
Thank you for your answer. As legislators, what could we do so that the Canadian population isn't concerned by the use of these technologies? Technology is advancing quickly because these concerns aren't good for anyone. So what could you do to decrease the distress from Canadians?
We implement any legislation put forth by parliamentarians. If there are suggestions, be it through the Privacy Commissioner or others, that there should be changes to specific aspects, the CRTC would undergo to meet all those obligations.
Pourriez-vous nous fournir par écrit quelques suggestions?
Could you send us some suggestions in writing?
Absolutely. I'll undertake that.
Merci beaucoup. Même question pour M. Ferron.
Thank you. Same question for Mr. Ferron. Do you have any suggestions? For suggestions, I don't have anything that I could give you right now. We follow the rules as they are written. As I stated, a lot of the rules are in the criminal code, and we are following these rules so that I apologize for interrupting. For people to trust the CRA more, do you have any suggestions that we as legislators could implement in order to help you? I don't have anything at this time that I could give you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Vinmeur.
Ms. Idlet, you've got 6 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Koyanami, and welcome. I have very quickly just some questions for Canada Revenue Agency related to the article that was originally published by Radio Canada in November 2023. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. In that article, it had been mentioned that CRA was using tools using these tools to analyze data related to tax offenses. My first question to you is, could you explain in more detail how the use of such tools by your institution can be justified under a federal law, if any?
Yes, thank you for the question, Chair. So the Criminal Investigations Program is responsible to investigate significant cases of tax evasion. That requires us to gather evidence. And our investigators will use the tools that they have at their disposal to be able to gather this evidence. Can include interviews. It can be interviews of suspects, of witnesses, but it can also include the use of judicial authorizations. This can be used for production orders or search warrants. Now, when we do search warrants, we can come across some electronic devices, and these devices will need to be able to extract the data from these computers or cell phones. And it's with these tools that we're talking about here today that we can do so. It allows us to get access to these tools in a very surgical way, not to go through the whole phone by ourselves, but the tools allows us to find what we're looking for, and this will be used as evidence ultimately that we would present to the courts.
If the authority for the use of these tools is not coming from law, where is the source coming from for you to use them?
So the authority we have is in the criminal code. That is what allows us to use the tool, to seize the tool, to seize these electronic devices in order to use the tools to extract the data.
And I have questions for both of you, both agencies, because when you were responding to questions to one of the conservative questions regarding surveillance, both of you responded to say that you don't use them, you don't surveil people, that you don't generally surveil people. But both of you mentioned that you do digital forensic tools, that you use them. Can each of you provide more details about what that actually means?
So for the Criminal Investigations Program at the CRA, the difference being that when we have a judicial authorization that allows us to do a search, and if we come across an electronic device and we seize this device, we would then be able to extract the data from it. So we have to have the tool connected to the electronic device, being a phone or a computer. And so the process is very limited that way. In other words, we can't be surveilling the Canadian population as a whole. These tools are made to be used with the actual phone or the actual computer or the electronic device that we have seized as part of a search.
Yeah, and I'll explain just the provision. There are several provisions under CASL, in the anti-spam legislation that we have. Some of those provisions relate to the CRTC's ability to investigate the installation of software without consent, which includes viruses and malware and botnets and those types of activities, the more nefarious activities, if you will. So when we're involved in an investigation related to those types of activities, we are often required to, seek a search warrant, to go collect devices, use this digital forensic tool to, it comes down to the basics of evidence. We identify the evidence, we analyze the evidence, and we preserve the evidence. And that's how we use this tool in those very limited circumstances on those very specific CASL cases.
Because I'm not very familiar with this file, I don't know if there are any reporting requirements of incidences that you've had to use digital forensic tools. Is there data that's collected annually to show how many times that you've had each of your agencies have had to use them, and do you report them to Parliament?
For the CRTC, we do not have a reporting requirement. Because our scope and our use is so limited, as I said, it's less than a handful of times in 10 years. So it is very specific.
We don't have any reporting requirements on the use of the tools. We do report various statistical data when it comes to criminal investigations, but not on terms of specific use of that tool.
Thank you, Ms. Idlet. That concludes our first round of questioning. We're going to go to our second round, 5-5, 2.5, 2.5, and we are going to start with Mr. Couric. Go ahead for 5.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thanks to our witnesses. And just an observation, it's interesting you talk about the PIA, but in the context of the report that triggered this committee to go about this study, I would encourage the idea of transparency by default to make sure that it is clear, because you're talking about a PIA being done, and certainly an early explanation about that process would have been helpful. And I'm sure that that the reporters that did the investigation would have valued that information as well. And just another observation, both of your departments acquired this information or this technology under a previous government and did the PIA. So certainly there seems to be a deep care for a previous president of the Treasury Board's commitment to ensuring that privacy was respected. To the CRA, I'd like to get some numbers if I could. How often is this technology to extract data from cell phones, how often is it used on a yearly basis within your investigative, well, the CRA in general, but specifically for investigations?
Sorry, I don't have the specific information you're looking for. We don't have specific number of times we've used the tool to extract the data from computers or cell phones we would have seized. It's something we can look into and provide information.
If you could provide that to the committee, I think it'd be helpful, because are we talking about dozens of times, hundreds of times, thousands of times? Like, there's a massive range of what could be possible. So if you could please provide that in writing to the committee that we could make public, that would be appreciated. Can I ask for that information?
Yes, we'll do our best to gather that information.
Okay, and just so that we're clear, we work on deadlines here, so by next Wednesday, if possible?
Do our best. Yep. We've had this tool for several years now. I don't know how far back we can go in terms of to provide fulsome numbers. We'll do our best.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you for that, and thank you for that, that Chair. I'm curious in relation to COVID-related programming. So CERB, for example, I know there was 185 employees that it was reported had inappropriately collected CERB checks. So I'm wondering, was this tool used in the process of determining the fault of those 185 employees?
So the criminal investigations program does not have the mandate to investigate CERB offenses. We do have the mandate to investigate other COVID benefits. And
who has the mandate to investigate CERB?
I believe it would be the CRTC or law enforcement.
Okay, and so continue with your previous.
And so the criminal investigations program, if we are investigating an offense of one of these pieces of legislation, we could use the tool to gather information if we've seized an electronic device during a search. But we would not use the tool to do an internal investigation of the actions of these people within the agency.
Okay, when it comes to over the course of COVID, was there, and I guess this is something that you could provide to the committee as well, if there was an increase in the number of investigations that took place. When it comes to the invocation of the Emergencies Act, was there any instances during the course of the invocation of the Act where this technology was used?
No, not for the CRA.
Not for the CRA, okay. Thank you very much. And has there been an instance where it has ever been used without judicial authorization?
No, you need judicial authorization to do your search, and that's when you would seize an electronic device. And so you have to have judicial authorization.
And in terms of safeguards to protect Canadians' data, I know that there's been a number of, and it makes headlines when, the tax authority gets hacked. But I'm just curious if you can outline what some of the safeguards are to ensure that Canadians' data is protected. It's incredibly intrusive to have a copy of someone's cell phone. Wondering what safeguards are in place to ensure that Canadians' privacy is protected during the course of an investigation.
So when we have a judicial authorization that allows us to do a search and then we seize an electronic device, this would then be stored in a standalone computer in an area where only our computer forensic analysts have access to. It's not connected to the internet. It's not connected to the network of the CRA. These standalone computers are in a secure area that allows for maximum protection.
Okay, and just to wrap up, it's not a question, but just to make sure, the Privacy Commissioner was here. He said that phone calls are welcome when asking for advice. So I appreciate that there was PIAs done. That's certainly helpful. But make sure that you and your employees and superiors, the Privacy Commissioner wants to work with you to make sure that the information of Canadians is protected, and certainly transparency by default is an expectation I would hope we all have upon every agency of government. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kirk. Mr. Baines, 5 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our two agencies for joining us today. My first question is to maybe the CRA, and we heard before how you gather evidence, and if the evidence requires, then the steps are taken into getting judicial consent to go in and try to extract information from using these tools. So I just have a couple of questions around how many CRA employees have access, to these forensic tools.
So we have in criminal investigations approximately 700 employees. Approximately half of them are part of the investigative groups, but the computer forensic analysts are a very small subgroup of specialized people who can do this type of work. I don't have the exact number, and that's something we can provide to the committee.
Please, but let's say an investigation takes place. Only a specific number of investigators would be looking at that, and not everybody would have access to these files?
Exactly. Only the people who are involved in the investigation. It's a need-to-know basis. So it's not even all the investigators that would have access. It's only the people who are involved in the file. And actually, the investigators only get access to the information that is relevant. These CFAs, or computer forensic analysts, will sift through the electronic devices and take out what is relevant for the investigation, and that's what the investigators will look at.
And what's the level of security clearance inside the agency that are authorized to access these tools? What are some measures you've taken inside that agency?
Our criminal investigations, the investigators and the computer forensic analysts have a secret clearance, and the information that we have is stored in special areas that only our computer forensic analysts have access to on standalone computers. The security on these computers have been assessed to be adequate and to be able to protect the information, and the risks appear to be low.
Okay, and now let's say someone that's not assigned to a case tries to access maybe something, you would be alerted in some manner, that you have those measures in place.
Yes, the not me personally, maybe ultimately if there was some wrongdoing, but the criminal investigations has some processes in place to limit who has access, and the outside of the criminal investigations, nobody has access to our files.
Okay, and are these tools used strictly to access the data? I think you've already mentioned specific to the cases you've investigated. What about cloud-based databases or data that's out of scope, that's accidentally accessed?
We're discussing here today actually help us to ensure that we are thorough, but at the same time very precise in what we get out of these computers or these telephones or any electronic devices. It allows us to be more surgical, to seek out only what is relevant to the investigation. When we have our judicial orders, they have terms of and references in the actual order that explains what we can get access to, and so those are other, I guess, ways of limiting what we would get our hands on.
Okay, maybe a similar question to maybe CRTC. I think there was you demonstrated how someone would access by entering the phone through through the wire or the USB or what have you to extract. Is there a ability to remotely extract information?
No, this tool does not work remotely. We actually have to connect to the device.
Okay, so you would have to get the warrant, get the approval to obtain the device, and then go in without any remote access, connect to the device, and then extract.
Absolutely. So through our search warrant is identified what we're looking for, how we will obtain that information using these types of digital forensic tools. That search warrant is explained to the individual when we're executing the search warrant, so they are well aware of what's going to happen, and so they willingly, or at least by court order, offer us up that device. Even more importantly, often they're required to give us the password. If we don't have the password to that device, we cannot use this tool.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Baines. Thank you, Mr. Haroun. Monsieur Villemure, pour 2 minutes et demie, s'il vous plaît.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would like to table a motion. It has been sent to the clerk. It was translated and will be circulated to everyone. That, in accordance with Standing Order 108.3H, the committee undertake a study of misinformation and disinformation and their impact on the work of parliamentarians, that the committee devote the next 3 available meetings to this study, that the committee invite experts in the field of misinformation and disinformation, and that the committee report its observations and recommendations to the House. Thank you very much, Mr. Villemure, for your motion. It is receivable. It has been sent out to all members. And I would like to say to our witnesses to please stay for a moment. We're going to discuss the motion that was tabled by Mr. Villemure. Mr. Villemure, do you have any comments to make on your motion? Many think tanks and the Global Economic Forum shared information, and they had statistics on businesses and governments and their concerns regarding misinformation and disinformation. And we've known for a while that these things exist. However, this year, the level of concern has raised and is similar now to concerns regarding climate change. It is something that can be subtle, but it impacts decision-making in Parliament. And when we have to make decisions that have an impact on our population, on departments and organizations, and with the arrival of generative AI, the concept of truth is at question because it's hard to tell what is real and what is fake. And I think that it is essential that we carry out such a study and that we hear experts in the matter so that we can ascertain that we can better serve Canadians and better detect these issues. Thank you, Mr. Villemur. I was talking with the clerk, and we had not received a notice of motion.
Problem here, so I may have overstepped my boundary there by accepting the motion. Now, if members don't want to discuss the motion, then we'd have to take this as a notice of motion to be discussed perhaps at a later date. So just like Mr. Barrett did before, and I'm very sorry for this, but if we can take this as a verbal notice of motion, and I appreciate your comments, and then perhaps we can discuss it at a future meeting.
C'est sans problème, Monsieur le
Okay,
Président.
merci, Monsieur Villemur.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Villemur, and again, I apologize. You still have the floor, if you'd like, for a minute and a half. Hello again. I'll be very brief, and I'll ask you, Mr. Arun, should the Privacy Act be modernized to reflect our new reality? And it's a question for everyone.
If it is deemed the Privacy Act should be amended for whatever reason, we will comply with those amendments.
D'accord avec mon collègue.
I agree with my colleague. Do you have any suggestions for this review? I don't have any comments today. Thank you very much.
See, Monsieur Villemur.
Thank you, Mr. Villemur.
Half minutes, final 2.5 minutes, and then we're going to adjourn the meeting after that. Go ahead, Ms. Idlet.
I'm also going to be asking for responses in written form. So having heard your responses to my previous block colleague, I do invite you to read a report that was made by the Department of Justice, who did consultations on the Privacy Act. So between 2020 and 2022, the Department of Justice had led engagement efforts with Indigenous partners on Privacy Act modernization. This resulted in, among others, the publication of the report on the 2022 engagement with Indigenous partners. As of today, February 2024, a government bill to reform the Privacy Act had not been introduced in the House of Commons. So my two questions to you are, do you think there is an urgent need to reform the Privacy Act? If so, why? The second and final question is, what are the most significant amendments you would like to see made to the Act based on your reading of the report?
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Idlot. Again, based on those questions, and Ms. Idlot, I just want to clarify the questions that you asked to the earlier panel. We want those responses to be public, correct? Just as we do with these ones, okay? So I just needed to clarify that because they're going to go into the digital binder for the committee, but we also want those responses to be made public. So thank you for clarifying that. Okay, that concludes our panel for today. I do have some information for committee that I do want to discuss just briefly. Mr. McIntyre, Mr. Haroun, Madame Lorrain, et Mr. Ferrand, merci pour votre témoignage aujourd'hui. There are a couple of things that I need to bring up for the committee. We're expecting the draft report by February 19th on the social media study that we did. We have confirmation from the President of the Treasury Board in relation to this study that she will be appearing March 21st. Based on Mr. Green's request the other day, the unions are going to be appearing on February 15th. We've also invited a guest that Mr. Villemure has proposed as well, so we're still waiting for confirmation on a couple of those. And then the 137 letters to the various institutions, the email has been drafted. It will be sent out soon if it hasn't been already. And the way the clerk is going to gather that information is on a table, and it will be distributed to members of the committee as well. So as it stands right now, next Tuesday, we are going to continue with the next tranche of department officials who are going to be here, and then, as I said earlier, the unions on the 15th. And then the 27th, just to remind members of the committee, we've got the RCMP commissioner and staff sergeant, I believe, coming in to speak on SNC Lavalin. So without any further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.